This was a hard one because Prohaska, I apologize, Pereira called out Anthony Smith. And it's not the first time he's done that. He was hot and heavy on Anthony Smith. Do you guys remember this? I mean, just recently, over a grappling match, he was challenged him to grappling, and Anthony even responded, said, hey, what is this about? You want to grapple me? I don't think you've ever grappled anybody. It's your idea to come grapple me? First off, I'll do it, but what are you doing challenging me? And not for nothing, I don't think Pierre's ever challenged anybody. Even Adesanya. I mean, it was very clear why he came here. It's very clear that he was chasing Adesanya down, but I don't remember him saying the words, right? He never denied them when other people, but I don't remember him saying them. Pereira went public and challenged Anthony. Anthony was all for the fight, but he was caught off guard because that's not what Pereira does, and Anthony didn't want to respond because he wasn't even sure that it was actually Pereira and not just an imposter. So he gets on the microphone tonight. He says, and this is Alex, he says Nebraska and he says Anthony. Anthony happens to be from Nebraska. Now, when the interpreter stated what Pereira said, he called out Israel Adesanya. I never heard him say Adesanya a single time. I never heard Izzy. I never heard Adesanya. Joe Rogan then comes to the ring. Well, yeah, they're all together, right? Joe Rogan takes the microphone back from Alex to the interpreter back to Joe. They throw the camera on Jamal Hill in the front row, and Joe Rogan says, well, Jamal Hill is going to be your next opponent. So he went from Nebraska Anthony to Adesanya Izzy to Jamal Hill. Three guys, three different... I mean, not for nothing. Like, this is Alex's night, right? And Alex is a promoter's dream. I have never, and I'm speaking personally now, Chael Sonnen, have never seen video footage of Alex Pereira that I didn't like. Never once. I watched him on Instagram on something called, it's like a skateboard, but it balances or something like this. I don't know what this is called. I'm a cool guy. I don't do stuff like that, but was it called like a wiggy board or something? Anyway, he's hitting focus mitts on it. It was interesting. I watched him on I couldn't tell you my own Instagram clips. I watched this guy on Instagram chip a soccer ball, big long kick, chips it up in the air, long enough to reach back, pull a bow, string it through his arrow, shoot it, and hit the soccer ball. The guy is interesting. The entire native angle and warrior, when they do that with Alex, is awesome. There's nothing, I am in awe. It is awesome. When I watch that. But the guy can't cut an interview and he can't call somebody out. He has some gimmick where I thought it was real. His wife and he were doing some shtick on Twitter where it was something about a statue. I don't get it. I've never got it, but I will admit it's interesting. They said they adopted a child. I thought it was real. I was responding like, hey, that's really noble. You know, that kid hit the jackpot. This is great, you guys. It was the statue. I don't get the statue. And then they started, like they're in the car days later. They're driving down the road and the statue's in the back seat and it's buckled in. I don't get it. I don't know what it means. I thought it was a little weird that they said adopted. Quite frankly, but he's interesting. I mean, the only reason I just went through his social media to tell you guys was to prove a point that what he does is interesting. I can't cite my own social media for you. This guy, I can cite them all. From a marketing standpoint, him getting paid, I mean, that native stuff is fantastic, particularly when he gets into the weeds and where it came from and what his heritage was. Heritage is so important in fighting. Oh my goodness, it's so important. The Francis Ngannou story doesn't work if you don't have the made-up story about the salt mines. Like, there's a reason that you take the time to make those stories up, because they're really good. I had a friend who was getting into wine, sold a bunch of wine. Did real well. We're down in the Willamette Valley, but people around the country, they're wine snobs will talk about the Willamette Valley. It's not called Willamette. It's called Willamette. Sounds like goddamn it. Try to remember that in the future. But I had a friend light this thing up. I said, you know, how do you do this? You know, it had to do with the grapes and the vineyards. He said, oh, no, that stuff's easy. You're just planting something, letting it grow, and you're picking it once a year. He said, the hard part is thinking of your backstory. Coming up with what's believable about my grandma who came over from Italy with not $1 to her name and a rolled up piece of paper in her shoe that her grandfather had passed to her. She couldn't even read yet, but her grandfather told her a message to get it to the so-and-so on 23rd Street, and he would know what to do with it. When he opened it up, it was a recipe to the greatest bottle of wine ever made. He said, like everybody that does wine to really spend a lot of time thinking of your BS backstory. So when you have an actual one, not a made-up one, I was working in the salt mine, I'm talking about a real one, like Pereira has, this stuff is amazing. But if you come into the UFC because you're trying to follow Israel Adesanya, you want to take something in your hands, you got a backstory with him, that's amazing. If you come out and you get the jump on Israel Adesanya, even if there's a little back and forth, enough to go around, it's amazing. If you can't study what Israel Adesanya does and copy him to draw like he does and make the money that he does, it's not quite as amazing. Israel Adesanya would never leave that octagon and not tell us who an opponent is. Specifically, clearly, and why. And why. And he's never said because he's ranked next. Because somebody in a rankings room that's never disclosed their name or location says he's ranked next. A lot of Adesanya doesn't give a goddamn what the rankings say. There's people that he wants to fight. And it's always been that middle letter of UFC that's thrown guys off. It's Ultimate Fighting Championships. And I only bring this up because you have Alex Pereira who does everything right. He seems like a promoter's dream. He's copying Adesanya, except he's not. He said Anthony from Nebraska. Go listen to the interview. Interpreter says that he said Israel Adesanya, which he absolutely did not. Joe Rogan came over the top of all of them and is apparently matchmaker now because said you're going to be facing Jamal Hill next, which makes a lot of sense. I like the Jamal Hill. All of us like the Jamal Hill. Obviously, he fights Jamal Hill. Where did you get next from? Unless you know when Jamal is coming back, how could you possibly say next? It's an open conversation. Joe did nothing wrong. He's got the right to speculate. We all have to speculate. We have to speculate because he didn't do his job. His one and only job is to make sure he's got a job to do tomorrow. Should have cleared that up. You're going to copy Adesanya? Make sure you understand what made Adesanya great.